Hi guys, this is SDGR7F88 speaking with a tutorial on how to create cobbles. Now, as I mentioned in my first update on the quayside layout, basically quite a few of you wanted to see how I did the cobbles on Compton Martin up there. So I'm going to show you a quick tutorial. Again, I cannot take credit for inventing the cobble model railway technique, as it is Chris Navard's. I'm just doing this little video on it to show you how I did it for Compton Martin. Now, let's get right into it. But remember, before we get into it, kind of a bit pointless me just saying that anyway. But you need to remember the two T's. Well, this is a little thing that I've just remembered. Tools and testing. Now, firstly, let's do tools. Tools, you will need a pair of scissors. This is for opening the clay. A pen. Now, this is a clicky pen. It could be a twist or a push one, doesn't matter. Oops, jammed a bit, there you are. As you can see. There are. Not very good, it's because I've been using it for clay, you see. But preferably one with quite a wide rim around it. Not sure if it'll focus, but see, this one's got quite a wide rim around it. This will add more texture to the cobbles, you see. But a nice little hole in the middle for the obviously to create the clay, the cobble itself, but also a nice wide rim to create the area where all the mortar is around it. A glue spreader. This is one for spreading glue, or two, what I use it for is actually cutting the clay, as it messes up knives and scissors. Cocktail stick in case you get any clay in between the rails where you don't want it to go, and also an actual bit of rail. This is just an offcut from Compton Martin, and you will use this to actually carve out the area beside the cobbles in the middle of the track. Oh, and the main ingredient, of course, in this wonderful cake is Das modelling clay, white modelling clay. Now, Das is the one as recommended by Chris Navard, and it's what I've used on all of the cobbles so far. I find it the best because it's quite easy to get a hold of. You can find it in most model shops. You can even find it in craft shops, and of course even in the range, which you get it for a really good price. This was about £3 in the range. Normally it's worth about £8, so you get a really good cheap in there. This is a kilogram block. If you're doing an area about this size, you may need a bit more, which is why I've got about half kilogram block left over from Compton Martin, which I've kept safe. And basically that's there. Oh, and one more ingredient I forgot to mention: PVA. This is very important, as clay does not stick to wood. As you know, if you did clay in school or whatever, or you do it at home as a hobby, you roll it around on a piece of wood and it won't stick, especially with shiny surface like this old bookshelf. So what you got to do is actually glue up the surface. So oh, and testing. I almost forgot the second T. Second T is for testing. Obviously, there are two things you've got to test. One, the track. Before you cobble the track, make sure the track you have laid runs. I've just tested Flash on this the other day, and it works perfectly. Remember, you've got to test it, or otherwise there's no point in putting all the cobbles all on top of it, only to find the rails didn't work in the first place, which means you have to rip it all up. You've wasted clay, you've wasted track, and basically it's going to be hard to rip up because it's going to be glued solid and it's going to be rock hard. And the second testing is obviously test out the technique on something beforehand. This is the first little tester I did before Compton Martin. As you can see, I was testing at tarmac as well. You've probably seen it in one of my early updates on Compton Martin. But as you can see, I tested the cobbles here and the theory on how to get the rails perfect. And yeah, I tested it. It's also good for testing paint and washes on it, although I didn't test the wash on this. I tested it on a section on Compton Martin before I repainted all over it again. Anyway, that aside, let's get started. Sorry if I get in the way, and if it's a bit hard to see with the light, it's just very awkward up in the loft. First thing you need to do is glue up your surface. Now, I do it in section by section. Remember, you've got to do this all on one day in a section, unless you find a specific place to stop, or otherwise it'll go rock solid and you'll create a horrible seam line. There's one on Compton Martin just there, which is not because I didn't stop. It's not because I stopped there. It's because I actually physically ran out of clay. So remember, make sure you got more clay than what you need. Anyway, once you glue up the surface, get it nice and glued up. You can use a glue spreader for this, but I'm using my finger purely because if you're using the glue spreader to cut the clay, it tends to. Whoops! Put some on the floor there. I'll have to mop that up in a minute. If you're using it to cut the clay, you tend to get glue all over the clay in the wrapper, and it doesn't make it very good. It will go rock solid in certain areas. So yeah, it's a bit weird. Now I have used the Batman foam underlay which I had left over from Compton Martin. This is to give it a more realistic height, but this also means that you will have to use more clay to achieve the effect, and also more glue, as you can see what I'm doing here. I'm only doing a small section. I'll stop videos in places where it gets a bit tedious, but as you can see here, this is you've got to definitely watch this bit. I had to glue it up. I've gone right up to the edge of the rails, literally right up to the edge of the sleepers. I've even got it on bits of the sleepers. It doesn't matter if you get it anywhere like that, as long as you don't get it on the rails themselves, because obviously the sleepers are going to be buried beneath the cobbles. But make sure you go right up the sides of this foam underlay and the sleepers, because obviously it's got to find something to adhesive to. So yeah, I reckon that will do for about that little section. Anyway, remember, one tool I forgot, but I have got an old bit to hand, is of course a tissue or a cloth to wipe glue and any spills on the floor like I just did down here, and also any clay residue off your hands. Right, then get a block of clay. This is just a little bit off that small thing. It might have gone a tiny bit hard, I'm not sure, but it seems to be pliable, which is alright, I suppose. Probably need a bigger bit. I can tear it off because it's just an older block, this. But you can use your, if you've got a big block like that, you can use that and just go, oh yeah, you can see it on there, can't you? If my hand's out the way, yeah, like that, and cut it across. Anyway, get the clay in your hand. Now, the reason why I recommend using white clay is because it leaves, well, one, it's easier to paint. You can paint lighter tones on top of it, because it's hard to paint, red clay. That's do a red clay, but white clay I reckon is the best. I'm not sure, but I personally thought it was a bit mouldable. I haven't tried the red one, but I remember using it at school. I remember it used to go quite hard, and I think it had to be blast furnace. That's another thing. It has to be air drying clay, and das is air drying clay, because you don't want to put your train set in a kiln. Anyway, so once you get all nice and moulded around sort of thing and warmed up, I think this is going to be alright. I'm not sure. But I'll give it a go. I'm not sure of this because this clay is a bit old. You basically, what you do is you then squeeze it into the area, as you can see here. Obviously I'm just doing it section by section. If you're doing cobbles, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's not flat, because obviously cobbles are famous for not being level. But if you're doing tarmac on the other hand, or for painting like what I did on part of Compton Martin, you will definitely need to level it out, and also cover up the nasty seam lines. As you can see, there's a seam line there. Sorry if my arm's in the way. But obviously if you're using seam little bits, make sure you actually manage to split it before, no, cover it up, because otherwise you'll leave a bit of a nasty seam. Right, you got to squeeze it down in there, compact it. Glue will tend to squeeze up around the edge, just rub it off with your finger. It's no biggie, and to be quite honest, it doesn't matter if you get any on the rails, you can rub it off. As long as you don't get any on the inside track, you're fine. When you're moulding up against the track, I'm not sure if you can see it there. I'm trying not to get clay on my camera. I'll zoom in. Here we go. Sorry about this. There we go. Make sure you see the edge of the rail. Run your finger along it and press down a bit on the clay so it's slightly lower than the edge of the actual rail itself. So basically you can see the top half. You know that it's like an eye shape, the rail. Make sure you can see the top of the eye above the clay. This is purely because if you've got an engine with low brake rods or whatever, like a pannier tank, they may hit them and may derail. So be careful on that sort of if you're doing stuff like that. And obviously I will be having a pannier running on this layout. So yeah, it's one word of warning there. As you can see, well, you can't see because I've got zoomed in. Whoops. Well, in saying that, if you get any on the inside of the rail, just ignore what I said earlier about it, but you could easily clean it off at a later date, as long as you're not going straight in and doing the inside of the rail, which I'll show you later. Anyway, I'm going to pause the camera here because I don't want, it's going to be a bit boring otherwise, just showing you me trying to level all this out, and I'll show you when this section is done and ready for cobbling. Right, when you've done a decent sized section, as you can see here, I'm zoomed in again, we're going to start doing the cobbles, because remember, if you do it all in one go, it's most likely the bit you started with will dry and you won't have time to do it. One thing you need to do before cobbling though, is to make sure, you can see when you do alongside sleepers, sometimes the sleepers show through. So what I've got to do is get a tiny bit of clay, and just plop it on top, and then maybe lick your finger a bit. Yeah, don't taste that nice because there's probably a clay on it. But and then you moisten it a bit and rub it in so it'll go perfectly flat. There's a crude way. You could probably use a bit of water, but it's just easier. I don't want to go down and get a pot of water, just do a little bit like that. But anyway, all going to be painted over anyway. And then once you've done that, you just smooth it down and make sure it's nowhere near the top of the rails as I mentioned earlier. Yeah. Gently does it. And while you're at it, go all the way along like that to make sure none is in the way. As this is going to create the little effect of mortar. If I zoom out. Sorry, you didn't see any of that, but it's going to create like the mortar effect alongside the rails. It's just rub your finger gently along the outside. Remember not to press down too hard, or otherwise you'll get that sleeper effect again. You don't want that. Right, there you go. Once you're sure it's all out the way, and you filled in any little cracks, because sometimes cracks appear. There are no big ones on here, but you can see probably there where I've patched one by using a little tiny bit of clay. You then get your pen, make sure the pen is actually up, and you start. Now it's best to start from one end and work your way along, because you otherwise you'll get an ununiformed area, if you know what I mean. But it's quite hard for me to try and start doing it because it's right in this little corner bit down here, and as you can guess, it's very hard to get the pen in. But what you do, go on, get in there. Yeah, I'm having trouble getting in between the rails there, but basically what you do is, if I zoom in, sorry I was off camera as well, but that's it there, I think. Oh, up we go. There, you can see I've started. Basically what you do is you just get the pen, I'm sorry if I'm getting in the way here, and you just sort of tap it onto the thing and just carry on going along. It's very hard to film. I'm going to get my head in the way because I don't want to necessarily ruin all this hard work I've been doing on here, but basically you just tap it and you sort of overlap them a tiny bit, and you go at sort of odd angles, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean, like instead of going, let's say they're all uniformed, a bit like a checkers, you know, with black and white, you sort of do it like that. Basically one goes in between, the next row goes in between the two on the previous row, and then vice versa, and that's how you do it, and basically you carry on like that along. I'm going to pause the camera here because there's no way, obviously the key bit of the project, but the thing is, I don't want to necessarily ruin my work, because obviously I'm getting my head in the way of, as you can see in front of the camera is my ugly face, in front of the camera trying to do it. So I'll pause it here, and when it gets to a bit of a better area I will show you a bit more of the cobbles. Right, here we are in a better position to show you what I'm actually doing now, as it was quite complicated to get it down in between the points down there, and obviously my head was getting in the way. Now remember, if you're going that way and you're right-handed, it doesn't matter if you're left-handed, but if you're right-handed, remember when you're laying these cobbles not to press down on your old cobbles, or otherwise you'll flatten them again, which is pointless, all the work you've just done, so be careful. Oh, I've zoomed in so you can't see it, but remember, if you're doing, you've got to mind those cobbles there, which you can just see on there with your wrist. Basically, I'm resting my hand on the rail before, and basically what you do is, it's still going to be quite complicated because I try not to get my head in the way because I've got to try and measure them, but just lightly tap, very lightly, just a small indentation, nothing, you don't have to press down really hard, because I found if you press down really hard, the cobbles will go very deep, and there'll be two problems with that. One, you'll press up all the clay around the outside of the rails, ruining the perfectly smooth, like sort of mortar finish alongside the edge of the rail head, sort of thing, making it unlevel again. Two, you will actually unlevel the actual cobbles themselves, especially in the middle part where there's no foam underlay and it's quite a thick blob of clay. So you'll make it go, you'll make it sag basically. And three, when you come to paint it, sorry, I got a bit of a cold. sorry about that. Basically, when you come to painting it, and it's too deep, the wash will actually penetrate it and stay in there, and it'll be really, really thick. Which is all right if you want it to be thick in that area, but most of the time you don't. You just want it to be a light bit of dirt in between. You don't want it like black. You don't want it like grey on top and then black mud in between, as it doesn't look realistic. So you just got to just lightly tap it and just constantly do row upon row upon row. One thing I forgot to mention, this is very, 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 very time consuming, and it will literally, as you can see, I've only done, since the last pause, it's been about 15 minutes, and I've only done that, if I zoom out, that much from the point, so I'm not even halfway across yet, this section. But it is very, very rewarding once you've done it. Come to think of it, the length of this video is becoming quite long, so I'm probably going to do a part 2 to this. I'll probably show you at the end of this video it all complete. What I mean all complete, all the outside area complete. And I'll show you how to quickly add the buffers in before the clay dries, because that's very important if you're adding buffers, like on Compton Martin up there. Which, yeah, you can see it in shot. But then part 2, I'll show you how to do inside the rails, because I'm going to probably leave this to dry for 2 or 3 days, because remember, clay takes a long time to dry, so you have to leave it 2 or 3 days. And then I'll upload a tutorial on how to do the inside rail, and then how to paint it, so that'll be part 2. But anyway, I'll pause the video here again, and I'll show you the complete results for the outside of it anyway. And then that'll be the end of part 1.